Hey everyone, I wanted to start yet another discussion topic for Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter Stories 2 regarding Capcom's big E3 plans for their upcoming event. We know that thanks to the ESA, Capcom will be hosting some type of event during their big E3 week on Monday, June the 14th. But sadly, as of the time of this recording, we don't necessarily have any full details as to what time this event would take place, and more interestingly and perhaps more importantly enough, what would actually be showcased within it. And obviously, because Monster Hunter Rise has been a big seller for them, in fact, it's actually been their biggest seller for the year so far, something that even Resident Evil Village hasn't been able to reach. We do know that they're going to have something to show for it. And that's the discussion topic that I wish to go over with you guys today, and I highly encourage you guys to leave some replies in the video so I could basically gauge the interest a little bit better on this, because I'm not necessarily sure what to expect from me personally, or if everyone out there is actually expecting Capcom to just kind of gloss over Monster Hunter Rise. Let's be fair, I do think they're gonna have something to show for Monster Hunter Stories 2. I'll talk about that at the back end of the video because I basically just want to focus on Rise. And like I mentioned before, on June 14th, the ESA has told us that Capcom will have some type of presentation alongside Mythical Games, Freedom Games, Razer, and of course Capcom. Even Take-Two is going to be partaking in this. So there's a lot of little smaller events starting around 11 a.m. Eastern time or 8 a.m. Pacific time, but we don't necessarily know where Capcom falls into this entire timeline. They actually haven't give us the details for that, which is the reason why I'm a little bit more open and more questioning as to what we could possibly see. The thing is that we also don't necessarily know what type of games they're actually going to show. You know, we do expect something like the DLC for Resident Evil Village to be showcased. There's a lot of rumors when it comes to their big Street Fighter game, their next big Street Fighter title, that perhaps is probably going to get a trailer or showcased at maybe their event, or at the very least like the Microsoft event a few days prior, or even at the Sony event that is actually being rumored to be airing sometime in July. So we do know that Capcom has some things to show, and I do expect Monster Rise to be part of that. The question is, what could we actually end up getting seen? And I had to actually go over, and you guys can see obviously in the video right now, the free title updates roadmap that they provided us when 3.0 came out. And contained within it, they show us that in mid-June we should expect a Capcom collaboration with Monster Hunter Stories 2 for Palico Layered Armor for Sunico. This is just your Palico getting a new skin and stuff like that. And I think I find it interesting that they're saying mid-June because, like I just mentioned before, this event that Capcom will be hosting is on June 14th. So that's literally the middle of June. So now I'm actually thinking that if Capcom does decide to show something when it comes to Monster Hunter Rise, at the very least, we should be able to see a little bit of a trailer or a clip of this Palico Layered Armor running about in the game, you know, as some sort of event quest. I'm sure it will be granted. We do expect to see at the very least the 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3 updates that will provide us with more event quests and downloadable content, and even more Capcom collaborations. The interesting thing about this is that we do know that event quests are happening every Thursday night. I keep making videos about those just about on a weekly basis, what you have to kill, what the rewards are. Those are already happening, so for them to try to showcase that is not necessarily all that impressive to me. But I do wonder what the downloadable content actually is, and because this isn't necessarily a big 4.0 update that we should be expecting at the end of the month, I am beginning to question what they could actually include aside from monsters, which we know are not going to be part of any of that. They would usually save monsters for their big 4.0 update, presumably around September. So what could they actually consider to be DLC, downloadable content, that's actually something that we would actually care about, that is not just necessarily an event quest? More importantly, could they showcase any of this during their big Capcom presentation? Are they willing to go that extra mile to give us something to be excited for, even if it's just a couple of weeks away? So I'm actually having a little bit of a tough time trying to come up as to what they could actually show that, again, could be that thing that people are excited to see, other than new monsters and perhaps new areas to explore, but we know that's not going to happen. I have talked about when I made the video regarding the new area, the new arena that we got to explore, the hot springs, that perhaps they could give us some sort of quest that are a little bit more difficult. That area seems to be specifically designed for challenges and stuff like that. So Perhaps, you know, one of the quests that they gave us there was that you can get to fight 3 apex monsters, but sadly the challenge is lost because you only get to fight the apexes one at a time. So you kill one, it dies, another one comes, you kill it, you know, it's done. It's like, it's pretty easy. What if they let us kill all 3 apex monsters at the same time? I think that would be an insane level of challenge. It would be ultimate chaos, and it's something that people wouldn't necessarily be able to handle and tackle right away. So I think stuff like that is something that they could start sprinkling in when they mean downloadable content. These just type of like harder difficulty quests that they're not G rank. We're not expecting anything like that right now, but they are designed with the end game in mind. Basically things that we would be doing end game to really give us a challenge. But moving over from Monster Hunter Rise, because honestly I just don't necessarily know what to expect. That's why I kind of want to hear your guys' feedback. What do you expect to see from Capcom in this specific event, or if anything? Actually, if you don't expect anything, I would love to hear that from you guys. But when it comes to Monster Hunter Stories 2, I think the story is a little bit easier to tell. Capcom is just going to give Nintendo, and this is where Nintendo comes in, on June the 15th, this is next Tuesday, a big new trailer. And the rationale on this is rather easy, is because this is an upcoming game that's still not out. Rise is kind of like a known quantity for them at this point. Nintendo knows what they could do with that game sales-wise, but Capcom just wants to sell stories. They've been trying to sell stories and tag it up with Rise for a very long time. Even their marketing spoke about this from a long time ago. So Capcom basically given Nintendo a new trailer to showcase it in their big Nintendo Direct, which obviously will have more eyes on it than the Capcom presentation will. I think it's kind of like a no-brainer. Whatever is showcased within that trailer, I do hope it's just more monsters. I made a video about that recently where I spoke about how I think they've done a poor job showcasing more monsters in Monster Hunter Stories 2, and I think they need to focus on just leveraging the fact that there's over 140 monsters within that game, and they're not doing a very good job at explaining that to people. So I do think that Capcom needs to do a trailer showcasing just monsters. They don't have to reveal all of them, but they basically do need to do a very good job of just telling people just the amount of things and variety that you can have within that game. And I feel like a brand new trailer at the Nintendo Direct is kind of like a no-brainer. This is why I also think that Capcom showcasing Monster Hunter Rise within their own Capcom conference or event on June the 14th is kind of like a better idea, because it's more suited for what they're actually trying to do, instead of showcasing Stories 2, which like I think would get way more eyes on the Direct than they would on their actual Capcom event. Hopefully you guys leave a comment telling me what are your expectations for this Capcom upcoming event. Do you think they're actually going to show Rise? Do you think they're going to show Stories 2? Because again, I'm not necessarily sure what Capcom is trying to do with Monster Hunter Rise and their upcoming roadmap, which, let's be fair, a lot of people have started to question what their actual idea or mentality behind this roadmap actually is, because they're basically telling us that throughout the summer, June, July, and August, we're going to get nothing but downloadable quests, event quests, and just Capcom collaborations, which are basically just more event quests to begin with. And they're not necessarily giving us any sort of big monsters, any sort of new real actual content to be able to partake in. You know, when it comes to like layered armor and stuff like that, I feel like people are just kind of running the course at this point. They're just like messing around with colors and different outfits. But like the meta has kind of been ruined by Valstrak's armor. I haven't actually made a video about that, but basically just every Blade Master armor set is just, hey, just make Valstrak's armor, because that thing is just godly at this point. So it's kind of unmatched. Every other weapon except like 2 are like taking full advantage of it. So yeah, this kind of been a little bit disappointing as to what the roadmap has been post-launch. We talked about the woes for 2.0 and even heading into 3.0. But yeah, like right now, I just don't necessarily think people are peak hype when it comes to Monster Hunter Rise. And perhaps they could like rectify some of that. And if they actually let, and this is something that I mentioned in the video a couple of weeks back, if they let too much time pass between big updates from May to June to July, August, and then perhaps even to September for the big 4.0 update with new monsters and stuff like that, people are just gonna flat out forget about Monster Hunter Rise and move on to other things. If we have this idea that there's big holiday games coming, which we do know of some already, this is even before the big E3 blast of reveals, I think that Capcom is going to be in trouble trying to get attention for this game specifically, not just on Switch, but just overall, with the lack of just updates. And I don't think a couple of just downloadable quests and collaborations is going to keep everyone engaged. It'll keep some people engaged, but not necessarily everybody else. But again, this is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.